All right, hello and welcome to this training. As you can see from the title, what we're going to be covering today is how to talk to anyone, anytime, anywhere. And as you can see from the overview, what we're going to be talking about more specifically is first the overview, then the rich inner life, the deep attention, the social energy, the real conversation, the review, and your action items for the day or the next few days. Before we get started, if you want to work with me one-on-one, make sure to book a call from the link in the description. If you want this document along with its respective training, then make sure to join the free community from the link in the description. And if you want weekly newsletters helping you improve every aspect of your life, then make sure to join the free newsletter, again, from the link in the description. With that said, let's get started and talk about the rich inner life. So some people can really talk to anyone, anytime, anywhere, and not because they were born extroverted and not because they walk around with perfect lines in their head, but rather because they understand something most people miss. And it's this: when you struggle socially, it's almost always one of three problems. You're either empty internally, meaning you've got nothing to contribute, you're absent externally, meaning you're not actually listening, or you're anxious energetically, meaning you make normal moments feel weird. That's it. If you fix those three, then conversation becomes almost natural. So that's exactly what we're going to do in this training, is basically fill yourself with life, become deeply present with people, and learn to lead the emotional frame. To talk to anyone, you need two opposite skills at one. You need to become interesting and interested. So meaning you need to become interesting enough to have something to give, and interested enough that people feel safe giving themselves to you. Everything in this training feeds one of those two skills. So we start with interesting, and there's a reason for that. A lot of social advice out there is pure technique, and technique without substance often turns into manipulation pretty fast. So you can't reflect, contribute, or connect if there's nothing in you to draw from. So the substance comes first. So be an interesting person in the first place. What does that actually mean? Read books, learn, know a bit about everything. Work on those skills of having interests, going deep on them, and also poking around in things that you're not currently interested in, things other people are interested in. So the logic here is pretty simple, right? If you learn more, you'll know more. And if you know more, you'll be able to have more conversations, and better conversations by definition. There's no technique that replaces that. So the deeper way to think about it is conversations are easier when you're actually alive. When you read, when you explore, when you experiment, when you build skills, when you travel, when you study human nature, when you form opinions, your mind grows more hooks, essentially. Someone mentions business and you have a thought. Someone mentions health, you have a thought. Someone mentions childhood, movies, money, habits, you have somewhere to go. And nobody's asking you to become a walking encyclopedia, but the goal is to become multidimensional, multidisciplinary, in other words. And you felt the other side of this. If your internal world is empty, every conversation feels like pressure. If your internal world is rich, conversation feels like sharing. So it's the same room, the same person, completely different experience. The part almost nobody points out is the same curiosity works in both directions. So if you're interested in books and podcasts and films and ideas, you'll also be interested in people, in their lives, in their worlds, in what they've seen that you haven't. That the private interest that you have, the private curiosity that you have in your own time, and the public interest and curiosity are really one skill. That's why I keep saying interesting and interested, because together, they are together as one thing, right? Now, being interesting was never about collecting random facts, right? A boring person consumes passively. An interesting person metabolizes life. They don't just tell you they read a book. They tell you the book made them realize why so many people avoid ambition, for example. They don't just tell you they went to Italy. They tell you what they noticed about how people over there relate to time, let's say. They don't just tell you they like fitness. They tell you fitness taught them that self-respect is mostly built through private promises. There's a difference there, right? You've lived something. You've thought about it. You've digested it. And part of metabolizing life is really developing the ability to have an opinion. And to have an opinion, you obviously have to have done some research first. So you need to have read the strongest case for a thing, the strongest case against it, and sit with it until you actually know what you think. So your opinions don't need to be rigid, but they can be considered perspectives that are still flexible, right? You can hold them firmly and at the same time not be attached to them so that you can update them when you learn something new, right? The other part is collecting stories, your experiences, your failures, your lessons, the stuff you've watched other people go through. If you get 20 real stories in your back pocket, you'll never stand there searching for something to say, since half of the conversation is really just trading experiences anyway. And look, books are just one door into all of this. You can learn from podcasts, from documentaries, from long interviews, from video essays, from films if you're watching them with attention. You can even learn things from music if you listen closely. One conversation with a historian on a podcast will leave you knowing things you didn't know that morning. A documentary hands you a whole world in 90 minutes. All of it goes in the same pool that you'll be drawing from later. And most of it costs you nothing you weren't already spending on a screen, right? There's also a shortcut most people never use, and it's other people's obsessions. Someone across the table is maybe into wine or chess or marathon training or watches or collectible cards, whatever. Ask them about it. Their answer becomes your education, and you didn't even have to open a book. And not only that, but there's a conversation right there. And you'll walk out of dinner with material that would have taken you a month to read upon. One question did that, right? It's the cheapest education there is. And you'll probably make a friend in the process because most people love talking about the thing they're obsessed with. They almost never get the chance in their day-to-day life. So the person who finally asks becomes memorable by default. And all that input still needs your own life mixed into it, though. A project that failed, a hard conversation you actually had, a year you'd never want to repeat. Without that layer, your knowledge sounds like a book report on someone else's life. And people can hear the difference. People relate to each other through struggle, through what they've gone through, right? As well, through their experiences. It doesn't have to be only struggle, but often we're more authentic when we share our struggles because we're willing to be vulnerable. And by definition, if you are vulnerable with someone, they will be vulnerable with you. By definition, because you've now shared something that could hurt you, and they can pick up on that trust. And most people would reciprocate with the same kind of trust. And then you push it wider. Be a bit of a polymath. Learn what artists care about, what athletes care about, what founders, parents, and academics care about. Even when none of it really pulls you or interests you at first, every world you visit gives you another door into another person. And the people you want to talk to live in all of those, right? And this is where it gets fun, because a polymath is interesting because they can connect ideas across different worlds because they're multidimensional. They're multidisciplinary. They take something from business and they apply it to relationships. They take something from fitness and apply it to confidence. They take something from biology and apply it to business. They take something from childhood and apply it to ambition. And if you can do that in a conversation, people will lean in because you just showed them that their own life can be seen from multiple different perspectives from an angle that they probably never actually looked at. And practically, this is a very small daily habit because you can just develop it by reading a bit more widely for literally 20 minutes. You can watch one thing that teaches you something once a week, right? You can once a week spend an hour on a topic you normally scroll past. And if you do that for 6 months, you'll literally never run out of things to say and ideas because you'll be living a life that constantly gives you something to say. You're going to be walking around coming up with lessons and stories and interesting things to talk about on your day-to-day life, because anything that happens in our day-to-day life, any piece of information we get, and we're surrounded by information, all of that can be turned into insight, into a perspective, into a lesson that then you can take and have real conversations with people about. But it requires you to have that skill of synthesis, of being able to spot these things so that you can turn them into ideas. And that's a skill that you can develop over time, right? You can develop it by being interested in life, by actually intentionally looking for the lessons that you typically would skip past. And one more thing on the inner life, and it's the part that a lot of people forget, is you ask what draws them to it, right? Your opinions eventually show up as taste, what you admire, what you skip, what you take seriously. And taste tells people how to think without you having to announce it. And so a conversation gets noticeably better when someone in it can actually say what they like and actually explain why. So someone brings up a creator or a city or a way of living, and you ask what draws them to it. And you offer what you notice in it, maybe one detail they hadn't considered. And now it's a real exchange with two people actually in it. One thing to watch out for here when it comes to taste is a lot of people confuse taste with some kind of a ranking system where they put themselves above other people or they put other people below them, right? If your taste mostly works as a ranking system for the people around you, they'll feel it no matter how polite you keep the wording. And nobody likes to talk with somebody that sees them as inferior because of quote unquote taste. Taste built from genuine attention reads completely differently, and that's the version people actually want to hear and that people can actually learn from and that you can learn from others, right? Now, with that said, let's talk about the deep attention. So now you're interesting. And here's the twist, and it's the second big idea of this training. You stop trying to be just interesting and you become interested. And I know we just spent a whole section building your depth, and now I'm telling you to kind of put it away. But the more you try to prove you're interesting, the less interesting you become, because people can feel when you're fishing for admiration and validation and approval. The real move is really to use your depth in service of their expression. And Dale Carnegie wrote in How to Win Friends and Influence People, you can make more friends in 2 months by becoming interested in other people than you can in 2 years by trying to get other people interested in you. And the simplest version of this is almost embarrassingly simple. You take anything someone says and you just say it back to them. Literally repeat their sentence. Now, someone tells you, let's say they've been overwhelmed with work lately, and you just say it back. Overwhelmed with work? Question mark. And they'll keep going every time. And two things just happen there. One, they feel like you understand them because you repeated what they said. So they are getting the idea that you're listening, right? Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to repeat it. And two, it prompts them to expand on what they said, which makes you more interested in the process. People like people who are interested in them. People love talking about themselves. So the more you give to them to do it, the better the conversation goes for both of you. And there are actually 4 levels of listening, and it's worth knowing which one you're on. Level 1 is waiting, where you're not really listening, you're waiting to talk. Level 2 is reacting, where you hear their words and you jump in with your own story. Level 3 is reflecting, where you mirror back what they said so they feel understood. And level 4 is revealing, where you catch the deeper emotion or the pattern underneath the words. So someone says that, let's say, they feel like they need a change. And the level 4 response is that it sounds like they're outgrowing the version of the life they've built so far. That's the level where people look at you like you just read their mind. So you can reflect their words and then reflect how it seems to you that they're feeling as an addition to that. Both of those are good, not one or the other. And none of these levels work if you're not actually there, right? You won't even be able to catch those nuances. You won't be able to catch their words and maybe how they feel, right? You don't need to interrogate people. You don't need to entertain them. You don't need to relate everything back to yourself. You just need to show them that you're actually here. And that means no half-built reply forming in your head while they're still talking. Your response grows out of what they just said. And trust me, people can tell the difference immediately. And so your body reports on you before you actually say a word. So your eye contact, your posture, how rushed your movements are, how rushed your words are. If your body reads tense and hurried, no sentence you say will fully override it. So you need to be calm first, bodily. And so a settled body also buys you a better pace. You don't owe anyone an instant answer, by the way. Like a short pause before you reply makes the reply feel considered. And it tells the person their words actually landed somewhere for you. And in fact, a short pause before you speak makes everything after the pause, everything you say after the pause, sound way more profound and interesting. And so then there's the skill that beats every compliment technique ever written down. Whenever you want to give a compliment to someone or recognize someone for something, notice things about people that they think nobody notices. And that's easier than you might think. The calm way someone explains a complicated thing, for example, or the fact that they think before they answer, or that they clearly care about doing things properly. Name something like that out loud, and it lands harder than any clever line because it's evidence you are actually paying attention to them. And the only way to notice those things is to really be present and interested in the other person, which is exactly why everything before this matters. Now, the trick with compliments is to point at what the person chose. So, anyone can see a nice jacket. Fewer people notice taste, discipline, restraint, or the way someone just made a hard topic simple. Choices carry more of the person in them. So, complimenting a choice tells them you actually looked at them, at their character as a person. So when you give a compliment to someone's choice in something, you're going way deeper than, oh, you look amazing today, right? One rule keeps this very simple. You're not trying to flatter, you're trying to notice. So you say it because it's true and you happen to catch it. People can smell the difference from a mile away from between fake flattery and actual noticing. The real version becomes one of the best moments of their day if you actually catch something specific about them, about how they decided to dress today, the colors they chose, maybe the shoes they chose, maybe something they just said, maybe the way they're speaking, maybe what they did recently, right? A lot of things, choices that people make are really compliments about their character as a person, and that can touch them deeper than just saying, cool jacket, bro, right? Now, for the thing that kills the fear of running out of things to say, every sentence a person says contains multiple doors. So you need to imagine a conversation as a hallway, essentially. And the sentence that they say is basically the hallway. And there's multiple doors to enter in that conversation. Somebody tells you they just moved here because they needed a change after their last job. Look at how much they just gave you, right? Where'd they move from? What kind of change? What happened at that job? Were they burned out? Are they someone who changes their environment when they feel stuck? What are they hoping this next chapter gives them? 6 doors in one sentence, at least, right? You never have to invent a topic from nothing. You just have to hear what's already being offered. And this is something called conversational threading. Now, the reason people panic mid-conversation is that they're inside their own heads, composing their next line, thinking about what to say next, while the other person is standing there handing you doors. And you need to come back out of your head into the actual sentence and conversation in front of you. Become interested again in the person. Be there. And the material is always there. And look, if you're in your head, you're dead, right? Now, one warning, interested can turn into an interview if all you ever do is really just ask them questions. It can feel like an interrogation, right? At some point, you have to add something. And this is why becoming interesting was step 1, because the rhythm you want is you mirror, you add, and you invite. So you reflect what they said, you add the thought, a story, or an observation from your own life, and then you invite them to keep going. So you're in a transition period. I feel like those phases are strange because you're between versions of yourself. Does it feel like that? That's, for example, one clean turn of the loop of what we were talking about. You reflect, you add, you invite. And you can run it all night, really, or all day, depending on when you're meeting the person. Now, another way to remember this is the triple A. Acknowledge, you add, you ask, right? You acknowledge what they said, you add something to the conversation, and then you ask the next question. It's the same rhythm, just a different handle. So you acknowledge what they just said, you add something of your own, and you ask the thing that keeps them going. So pick whichever version sticks in your head, because mid-conversation you won't have time to go looking for it, right? Now, with that said, let's actually cover the social energy. So everything we've covered so far is really what you say and what you hear. And this third piece really decides how all of it gets received. And most people have never once thought about it. Your energy as a person affects the energy of the people around you, right? Kind of common sense, but a lot of people forget about it. Your energy is other people's energy. If you walk in tense, other people will tense up. If you walk in rushed, well, people will feel rushed. If you walk in open and grounded, people will relax without knowing why. You're silently answering a question for everyone you meet. What kind of interaction is this allowed to be? And this is the mirror principle, right? And it might be the single most important concept in the whole training. If you're judgy with people, people will be judgy with you. If you're scarce with people, people will be scarce with you. And on the other side, if you're open with people, if you uplift people, they'll be open and uplift you right back. Generous gets generous, right? Whatever you bring into the interaction is usually what gets handed back to you. So check what you're bringing. A lot of the times people complain about being judged all the time. And at the same time, they're being judged as other people. And they are not noticing the hypocrisy. And scarcity looks like needing them to laugh at every joke, or to validate every point you make, or to confirm that you're liked. The moment you need something from the interaction, the other person feels pulled into managing your self-worth, and the whole thing kind of tenses up. Nobody relaxes around someone who's silently keeping score. On the other hand, abundance is the state you're after, right? And is built on self-respect. You give attention freely without needing an immediate return. You pour into other people's cups because yours is overflowing, and it will be overflowing if you have self-respect. You'll be able to show interest without chasing, right? You'll be able to contribute without performing and acting. And you'll be able to walk away from a flat interaction without it meaning anything about you. You're not going to take it personally. People can breathe around that, and they'll show you a version of themselves that the needy version of you would never have met. Another way to think about the mirror is every conversation has an invisible invitation, and your energy is the one writing it. So you're telling people who they're allowed to be around you before you've said anything of substance. Some people make others feel small, judged, boring, and some people make others feel funnier, deeper, smarter, comfortable, more alive, safe. You need to become the second kind. And that might be the deepest version of talking to anyone there is. Think about what different energies broadcast. Neediness puts pressure on everyone in the room. Judgment makes people defensive. Rushing them makes them feel like an item on your list, right? Open, grounded, and not needy. That combination lets people breathe, and you can feel a room loosen when somebody carries it in. So the real goal is to become the kind of person people like themselves more around, right? People like themselves more around you. People remember how they felt about themselves in your presence far longer than they remember your best sentence or line. So make them feel funnier, smarter, more alive, better about themselves. And they will look for you in every room you share after that. That's literally it. Leave everyone you meet better off than before they met you. And the mirror also explains why judgment kills conversation. If you're judging people left and right, if you present yourself as a judgy person, what does that tell the person in front of you? That you'll probably judge them too in private when you're not together. And that goes for everything, not just being judgmental. So they hand you the edited version of themselves, the saved version, the boring version, so that there's nothing you can judge them on. People don't open up around the person with the sharpest opinions, right? They open up around the person who can hold complexity without instantly condemning it. Meaning, people are complex. People are more than one thing. If you label people in this black and white, all or nothing kind of thinking, you're taking the easy way out, really. Because black and white thinking requires zero thinking, really. It's the easiest form of thinking. It's just labeling things as black or white, all or nothing, etc. It's either this or that. That person is either smart or they aren't. The best conversationalists run a generous interpretation of people. So if someone's awkward, maybe they just need a second to warm up. Maybe someone's quiet. Maybe they're just being observant. Someone's intense. There's probably something they deeply care about, right? They're maybe passionate about the topic. The generosity creates room, and room is really where connection actually happens. And no, this doesn't mean having zero standards. It means your standards don't leak out as constant contempt for people. And watch what tearing other people down does to the person listening, right? Every time you mock someone who isn't in the room, the person who is in the room learns where their own name might end up. So if you mock vulnerability, well, they'll hide theirs. If you punish honesty, well, they will go fake on you, right? Never decide that something is awkward. And I mean that literally. If you think it's awkward, the other person will think it's awkward. If you don't think it's awkward, they won't either. Because your energy is other people's energy. Awkwardness lives in the interpretation of the moment way more than in the moment itself. So a silence isn't really awkward until someone decides it is. And more often than not, it's ourselves that decide that, and then the other person takes it that way. They follow our interpretation, because if we did something and we ourselves think it's awkward, we're telling the other person what to think about what we just did. So a failed joke isn't awkward if you keep moving. A direct compliment isn't awkward if you say it cleanly and let it sit, and you don't find it awkward yourself. And this is the wild part. The most confident people are saying the same things as the most awkward people. Same sentence, just different nervous system and different interpretation of the moment. One person says they like your jacket and immediately apologizes for saying it. Oh, that came out awkward. Oh, that was too direct maybe. And they start apologizing. The other person says they like your jacket, adds that it has a cool shape, and then they move on. What shape does a jacket have? Doesn't really matter, but they're confident in the way they say it. And so the content is nearly identical, but the difference is that the second person doesn't apologize for existing. Which brings us to the principle underneath all of this. The frame is stronger than the words. People respond less to your exact words and more to the energy that tells them how to interpret those words. If you treat your words as embarrassing, they'll feel embarrassed, and they'll feel embarrassing. Treat them as normal, and they'll feel normal. Treat silence as comfortable, and it becomes comfortable. Confidence at its core is really refusing to abandon yourself when social tension shows up. You said the thing, let it exist, and you continue. And the last piece, anyone, anytime, anywhere, means all kinds of people, right? And talking to anyone was never about running the same personality at everyone. It means being adaptable without being fake. You reach the intellectual through ideas, the artist maybe through taste or art, the entrepreneur maybe through ambition or talking about businesses, the athlete through discipline, the child through play. Social intelligence is range, which goes back to the inner depth, meeting different people in different worlds without losing yourself. And the without losing yourself part is really what keeps range from turning into people pleasing or acting fake. Your pace can change, your topics can change, your humor can change, but your values don't. If you hold those still, you can bend everything else as far as the moment needs. And notice how this loops straight back into section 1, right? Just like I said, the reason you can talk across worlds at all is the rich inner life you built. Every book, every documentary, every topic you explored gives you a door into someone's world. And this is really what all that reading was for and all that learning, which is, by the way, a continuous process. You don't just stop at some point. You need to continue being an interesting person. You need to continue learning, continue being curious in your private life, by yourself, reading books, watching documentaries, learning about the world, but also in your social life, being interested in other people, being curious in other people, because you can learn something from anyone. So with that said, let's actually talk about the real conversation. So what's all of this actually for, right? The last big idea, and it's the one that separates this from every charisma hack video on the internet. The highest level of conversation is not extraction, it's contribution. You're here to leave the person slightly better than you found them. Sometimes that means making them feel understood. Sometimes it means helping them clarify something, making them laugh, making them feel less alone, or reminding them of their own potential. How beautiful is that? Even a 2-minute exchange can do one of those, right? The most underrated contribution is accurate understanding. People get looked at, measured, compared, and interrupted all day long. Give someone 10 minutes of actually being followed, actually being present with them, and the conversation rises past small talk on its own. And what you walk in carrying decides which of those you'll make. If you come to give, well, you'll start hearing what would actually serve the person in front of you. It shows up in your timing and your questions before you've even noticed it happening. So replace the question of what do I say next with a better one. What is here right now? Like, what is actually happening? What is this person excited about? What are they avoiding? What emotion is sitting under their words? What are they actually saying that they're not saying? What's funny about this moment? What's interesting in this room? The first question traps you in your head. What do I say next? The second ones put you back into the moment where all the actual material lives, right? And this is the shift from performance to presence. The best conversationalists aren't searching for lines. They're paying attention to aliveness, to life. And when you're paying that kind of attention, the right thing to say tends to show up on its own because it's usually sitting right there in front of you. And people won't remember the cleverest thing you said anyway. They'll remember how much of themselves they were able to reveal around you and how you made them feel. So if you carry one framework out of this whole training, make it this one. To talk to anyone, go deep, meaning DEEP. Depth, empathy, energy, presence. Depth is the rich inner life, the reading, the opinions, the stories, the range as a person. Empathy is the deep attention, reflecting people, noticing them, making them feel accurately understood. Energy is the frame, staying open and abundant and refusing to declare moments as awkward. And then presence is this last piece, staying with what's alive right in front of you, what's actually happening here in real life. Not in your head, but in front of you, right? The four work as one skill. Depth gives you something to say. Empathy tells you when to say it. Energy decides how it gets received. Presence keeps you in the moment where the other three get used. If you miss one, you'll feel it all technique and no substance, or all substance and no delivery. And none of it clicks in a day, by the way. This is a continuous process. The first conversations where you actually try this will feel a bit mechanical, and that's fine. Give it a few weeks of real use, and at some point you'll catch yourself mid-conversation fully in it, no script anywhere in your head, and you'll realize the whole thing has gone automatic, as it should, because this is natural. We've lost the art of conversation over time, but this is natural. This comes natural to us, connecting with other people on a deeper level. So it's not you learning anything new, it's just you relearning something that you've lost. Maybe this whole video described you. Maybe this is the exact thing that's been holding you back in dating or in friendships or in business or in how expressed you actually are day to day. And you know that there's more in you than what comes out of your mouth in the room. And the honest problem is that you're not sure what to focus on first. And that's the exact thing we help with. We help ambitious people turn confusion into clarity so they know exactly what to focus on, what to fix, and what to do next across their health, wealth, relationships, and self or mindset. So if that's you, book a call from the link in the description and we'll map that out for your real life with your real situations. With that said, let's go over the review. We talked about the overview, the rich inner life, the deep attention, the social energy, the real conversation, the review, and your action items for the day or the next few days. First, this week, feed the inner life on purpose. 20 minutes of reading a day, one documentary or a long interview or a podcast, and 1 hour on a topic you'd normally not be interested in. You're building the supply you'll be pulling from in every conversation from here on. In your next 3 conversations, do 2 things. Repeat 1 sentence back and watch what happens. Then run 1 full mirror, add, invite loop. That's basically it. Don't try to use everything at once, just those 2 with full attention. And that will teach you more than rereading this training 10 times. And then if the real problem is that you don't know what to focus on first, book the call below, because as I said, we help ambitious people turn confusion into clarity across their health, wealth, relationships, and mind. So you walk away knowing exactly what to focus on, what to fix, and what to do next. With that said, thank you for being here. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you for the support. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.